You know it's true. You know it's true that you are the least of the 360.
I totally know that's true. No argument whatsoever.
Well, let me see. It's Jen. Is it Jen?
Yeah, Jen Herman, Stefan,
who's on with us
Amanda Robinson.
Jen, Amanda Robinson, and Stephanie Liu, and so and you. How did you get those guys to work?
Me. I pay them every single month, and they keep taking my money.
Why do I think that's?
I'm glad it's just the two of us, right? Because that's on the DL.
It's on air, and I have a funny hunch that the payola is going to be a big part of our conversation today as we talk about influencer marketing, because it's all about the green at the end of the day, isn't it? It's all about the green.
That's right.
Mike, I'm so happy that you're joining us. You have just carved out such an excellent reputation for a guy that knows. It's like you're the conscience of the social media marketing community. You always seem to tie into the people who are doing things right. And so I just got to give you props for that. And the job that you guys have done with Agora Pulse in building Agora Pulse into, if you take a look at the roster of influencers who work with Agora Pulse, it is literally best of breed. And every one of them has, brings something to the table. And so you're the perfect person to talk about this, because influencer marketing, like, it's gotten a bit of a bad name in some aspects, but it's such an important. But when it's done right, it's just the rising tide, and every ship gets lifted for the influencer and for the brand. Am I correct?
You are 100% correct, and I appreciate you mentioning the work that we've done at Agora Pulse, starting with Emmerich. He started it, he worked with you and worked with me as an influencer, and then brought me on board to kind of, run the program and take it from there. And I appreciate you noticing that, we've tried and we've worked hard at making sure that the relationships that we cultivate and the influencers we bring in really reflect our brand values. I think that's an important part of influencer marketing.
So let's break it down. So influencer marketing is, I'm sure everybody's got a different opinion of it. There's the kind of the newsy, salacious side of influencer marketing, which really, how long ago is it now? Is it 18 months ago? When did the Fry Festival happen? Or the Fire Festival?
Yeah, Fire Festival. Yeah, it's a couple 2 years ago.
Yeah, and so that was the first time that for much of the general population that the term influencer kind of bubbled to the surface. And of course, it was in a negative story, the fact that all of these Instagram people who had large followings were being paid by this festival to promote it. They were basically lying. They were saying that they were, that they knew what was going on and were part of it, but they were being paid well to join it. And all of their followers followed them and signed up, and it was a debacle. It caused Instagram to change the rules, but it also cast a little bit of a shadow on what you do, which is influencer marketing. So in a nutshell, how do you describe what you do? Like, you're at a cocktail party. What do you do with it? What's influencer marketing, Mike? What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, so I pay people to talk about my brand when they've never met me or they don't know anything about my brand, and they just take my money and they say wonderful things. That's how it works, right? No. No, and you're absolutely right. One of the things with Fire Festival, not only was it a horrible debacle in terms of an event, there was not one but two Netflix documentaries that dropped at about the same time. So yeah, it definitely made primetime mainstream news, which you never want from that perspective. But the interesting thing to me about influencer marketing is that what people hear about and they talk about, that's 5%, maybe 10% of the industry. Just a small tip of the iceberg kinds of a part, because most businesses aren't shelling out tens of thousands of dollars a month in influencer marketing. Most businesses aren't going out and hiring celebrities to rep their brand. And yet, virtually every business is using influencer marketing. Maybe you don't know it, and we're going to talk about what that means in a second. But if every business is using influencer marketing, then it means something else, right? It's not just hiring the big celebrities. So in a nutshell, influencer marketing is working with people to reach their audience. Mm-hmm. And their audience is people that are following them, maybe on social, maybe not, but they've come to rely on that individual for information, for their opinion in a way that relates to what the brand is doing. So let me break that down a little bit. If you are a plumber in a small town, right? You are doing work for the consumers, maybe businesses in that area. You could be potentially reaching that audience if you are partnering with somebody who's talking about home maintenance and DIY kinds of projects and that sort of thing, because they're creating content, they're reaching an audience, and they're in a position to help you reach that audience, even if it's a small audience.
I love that you started with that local story, because the genesis of influencer marketing is your buddy who knows a little bit more than you about something, who you call and say, I'm buying a new car and I'm torn between the Nissan and the Toyota. Which one should I get? Because he knows a little bit more about cars than me. That's the beginning of influencer marketing. We use it at every stage of our lives, all the way through.
Yep.
But once we grow to the social marketplace, then people are cultivating a following and have the opportunity to leverage it to a certain extent.
Yeah, and that's 100% correct. So it's basically word of mouth, right? It's recommendations, it's referrals, it's relationships, which means if you want to do it really, really well, what you need to look at doing is scaling that same behavior that's at the micro, or what we would call nano level. Somebody that just, they have, the connections are in the hundreds. Maybe they're not even social media. Maybe they are president of the local Rotary Club, right? Or Chamber of Commerce, where those connections are physical and relational and just as real as, Twitter followers, maybe even more real, depending on how you look at it. But it's on a smaller scale. So how do we as businesses leverage people who have much larger audiences? Basically the same thing. It's about building relationships with those individual people, not just forking over tens of thousands of dollars of cash. Because if there's no relationship there, there's no authenticity. And that's exactly what the Fire Festival debacle is. I love that word. That's what that debacle exposed: the total lack of relationship, the total lack of authenticity.
Exactly. So, as an influencer, as somebody who builds a social media following, there's a lot of ways that we can monetize our relationships. And the most simple and basic probably is through affiliate marketing, where it's very similar to influencer marketing with one profound difference, I think. And I'll be interested to hear your take on this. But when we do affiliate marketing, I sit there and I say, oh, this is a product that I like, I use, I understand. I don't need to form a relationship with that company. I already have the relationship in the fact that I use and I'm versed with the product, and I know I can recommend it, and I'm willing to put my name against it to my community, saying you should buy this, and then as a result, I can be paid an affiliate commission. That is like early dating steps towards influencer marketing. For me, the difference is when I sign an agreement with an affiliate, with an influencer, with a firm that wants me to work with them as an influencer, I believe that the dialogue is two-way, that I now have input into the product, into the marketing, into the support of that product, and that my voice, that I'm seen as a partner and not just as a marketing arm. That if I call, and this used to happen all the time with Agora Pulse, they would say, we're rolling out a new product. A feature. What do you think of it? I would give feedback on the feature, and usually it's great, but I remember one time when poor Emmerich, he rolled out the YouTube comments to me, and he said, I'm so excited, Steve, because I know you've been bugging us for YouTube comments. And I came back to him and I said, sorry, they're useless. And he went, what? He was not happy with me. But it wasn't your fault. It was how YouTube was allowing the conversation happen in API, and I couldn't do what I needed to do. That trust, that relationship, I think, encapsulates what a influencer relationship is, as opposed to an affiliate relationship.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. And I love a couple of things that you said. First of all, you made a very astute observation there that kind of gets overlooked sometimes, which is that because of the nature of the relationship that you, the influencer, can potentially have with the business, that means you might have insider information. You might have an inroad to the CEO or the product manager or somebody of import there that a normal customer would not be able to just, ring up or email. And you have then input into that particular company's products, feedback on their products, input into the direction of the company. I know, again, you've mentioned Agora Pulse. We've worked with influencers in the past to help understand what we aren't doing enough of, or we aren't doing right, or what functionality we're missing. And that helps drive the conversation on our product team.
Mm-hmm.
That is really valuable, particularly to people who enjoy having that access, who enjoy having that feedback. And we're going to come back to this because that doesn't cost me anything as the business owner.
And that's kind of what the question that I wanted to ask was, what is in it for the business owner? I mean, I think we can all see, sales. I'm going to make revenue. I'm going to reach new markets. That is obvious with an influencer, but that's not really that doesn't give you the picture of the whole benefit of influencer marketing for a brand.
Yeah. And this goes back to the idea that this is more than just an affiliate relationship. It's more than just a paid advertising kind of a deal, right? I mean, people could pay me to put a banner on my website, and so I'm just going to advertise their product or service, and maybe they'll get some clicks, maybe they'll get some sales, and it's just a simple transaction. Influencer marketing is relationships, and relationships are not transactional. You can't simplify them that way and just say, oh, okay, I'm in this relationship with this person because I get X, and that's it. That's not real life. There's much more that two individuals, whether it's like real people, personal relationships, or the professional relationship that occurs between an influencer and a brand. There's additional benefits. Some, might be more obvious. Some are trackable. Some aren't. And there's nuance there, right? So one of the things that we get all the time with our influencers is the opportunity to collaborate on projects. And those collaborative projects, they might not necessarily result in any more sales than anything else that we might do. Might even result in less sales compared to the output of work. But they're fun. They're interesting.
Yeah.
What's that?
And what you spend on it. The return on investment might be a little lower as far as short term.
Right. But then there's goodwill that's formed. There's brand affinity that gets formed, which means that individual, they get to work with me. They get to work with Agora Pulse. So they work with Steve, or they work with InVideo, or whatever brand they're working with, and they get to know them a little bit more, and they enjoy that experience, which makes them that much more likely to want to do something else down the road. And there's brand awareness, which is 100% unmeasurable, no matter what anybody says, and yet it's super important, right? If someone's watching today and they've got a business and they're able to work with a couple different influencers on a couple different projects, maybe in one case they work together and they create a live video, just like we're doing today. And maybe with another influencer, they create a piece of blog content. And maybe a third influencer, they do a series of social posts. So now they got 3 different campaigns that are going on somewhat simultaneously. And if they're targeting the right audience, there's going to be some overlap there. Some people will be following 2, maybe all 3 influencers. And the more niche you get, the more specific, whether it's geographic or industry, the more likely this is to happen. And this is a very good thing, because now we're creating what's called frequency illusion. So Steve, you mentioned earlier, you might call your friend and say, hey, should I get the Nissan or the Honda? So in that instance, you're car shopping. And we've all experienced this phenomenon where we'll start researching a car. Maybe you're looking for affinities. Maybe you end up buying a white Q60, and you roll off the lot and you're driving home. How many white Q60s do you see in the 10 miles it takes you to get from the dealership to your house? They're all over. It's like everybody went out the same day to buy white Infiniti Q60s. And that's called frequency illusion, because our brain has been processing all this information about cars and Infinitis and different models and different colors. And we've been exposing ourselves to all this information over and over again. The same thing happens with good, smart influencer marketing. We get multiple influencers on multiple channels talking about the same brand and the same benefits. Now, as an individual consumer, whether it's B2C or B2B, it doesn't matter. As an individual consumer, I'm seeing this content and I'm seeing these brand mentions in multiple places. And now I see this brand everywhere. They are everywhere as far as my brain is concerned. And that is immeasurable.
and the trust funnel starts because all of the people I trust are on board with them. So there must be something good about that. And there's also a bit of FOMO. You don't want to be left out. You don't want to be left out as well at that particular point.
Right.
So how does a brand then start to build a stable of influencers? How does it go? Now I know with Agora Pulse, Emmerich did it I think he just brute forced it back when he started. He went to every social media conference and got to know every one of us and decided some of us were cool and some of us weren't. But he literally did it just through his own power of his own personality and stuff. But that's obviously not that's not the practical in most aspects. So how do you go about then finding the right influencers and knowing at what level you should enter with them?
Actually, it starts exactly like what Emmerich did. Now, it may not be physically going to a social media marketing conference because it depends on your business in your industry, of course, but it does mean being present at a very personal, individual level. I still do the exact same thing. I'm 2 years on the job. I am still reaching out personally and connecting personally with all of the influencers in my space, which is an important consideration to think about, is that relationship building doesn't happen on anybody else's schedule. It's not predictable. It's not foreseeable. So, Steve, I befriended you, I don't even know how many years ago. And there's no way 6 or 8 years ago, I could have predicted that you and I would be on this show in this community on this day. It doesn't work that way. We just don't know. So you start off with individual relationships. And now for most businesses, what this means is identifying who the influencers are in your space, in your niche, and following them on social media. Now, obviously, if we're talking about the nano level, we're talking about, joining their organizations and being a member of the community and that sort of thing. But for anything above that, where we're really looking at social media influencers, you can go to Instagram, you can go to Twitter, and you can follow the people who are talking about your industry, your competitors even, right, in your space. And you can begin to form relationships with them. And you need to do that every single day. You need to keep connecting with new people every single day, and then nurturing the people that you connected with yesterday and the day before. And by nurturing, I mean engaging with them, commenting on their posts, sharing their content, learning about them. Yeah, looking to have smart conversations with them.
When you could jump on a plane and go to social media marketing world or inbound, it was pretty easy. Now you got to work it.
Yeah. It is definitely a challenge today, with no events in virtually any industry around the world this year. It's going to be harder to create those personal relationships, because the fact is, when you get to see me face to face, and we're kind of mimicking this on video right now, when you see me face to face, you get to read my body language, you get to hear my tone of voice, right? And we are kind of forced to engage, even if it's just a couple moments as we're passing in a hallway, right? You say hi to me, unless I'm rude, I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk to you. Video goes a long way towards replicating that. So if you have opportunities to do a breakout room, whether it's a Zoom room or a messenger room or something like that, and get into a kind of a side conversation with one or more people on video, take advantage of that opportunity, particularly today, because this is how you're going to get to know somebody, and they're going to get to know you in response.
What percentage of influencers come from other influencers? It comes from the relationships you have.
Many. Percentage wise, that's hard. Because this is going to be different for everybody. I can tell you, for me personally, in the social media space, almost everybody that I know has been introduced to me by, the few people that I managed to really carve out strong relationships with almost 10 years ago on Google Plus. I'm dating myself here, right? Yeah. I really got to know a few guys really, really well on Google Plus back in 2011, 2012. And they started sharing my material. They started introducing me to other people. And that's how my circle of influence grew, starting back then. And it's taken years. I'll share a quick story, because I share this all the time. People love it. 2016 was my first time going to social media marketing world. It was one of the first big events that I'd ever attended as an individual. And it was overwhelming. I mean, there's like 3,000 people. attend that conference. And when you don't know anybody and you're a particular introvert like I am, that's very overwhelming. But I knew one person. I knew Peg Fitzpatrick, who's a star in our space, right? But we've been able to connect on Google Plus again, mutual connections and friends and so on. We developed a friendship, and she was there, and she didn't mind that I followed her around like a puppy, so I did. And she wanted to go to a session. I'm going to that session with you. Sounds great, Peg. Awesome. Because I don't want to be by myself, right? And one of the big connections there was we went to lunch. And back then, the lunches at Marketing World were long tables with box lunches, and you'd grab a box lunch, whatever flavor you wanted, and you'd pick a table to sit at and network with other people. This is very important. So I'm following.
They called it the networking plaza.
The networking plaza. That's right. And so I'm following Peg, and she sees one table with one guy sitting by himself off in the distance. It's got a little flag on it that says international, whatever. And she's like, let's go sit with him. Whatever. I'm following you, Peg. It's Emmerich Erno, the CEO of Agora Pulse, who I'd never met before. I'd never even heard of Agora Pulse, quite frankly, in 2016. But she introduces us. She knew Emmerich. He shows me Agora Pulse on his phone, just conversationally, organically, no pressure. He's not selling me. In fact, he gifted me a free account. And that sparked a relationship that over the next couple of years blossomed and eventually resulted in a hire. We did not know that was going to happen that day, but we were open to the opportunity. He was generous in giving of his time and access to his app, which is another real key thing, I think, for influencers and for businesses that want to do influencer marketing. Be generous and look for things that you can give away for free, because you just don't know what's going to happen with that relationship and that opportunity 1 or 2 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. It's I always there's obviously I've got a lot of companies that I have terrific relationships with, but it's like the one negative comment you get on YouTube. There's one company who is in your space who I did a video on their product, and I paid for the product while I did the video. I quite often I don't want to when I do a video, I don't want to be gifted it, because I want to see what the real support is like, etc. And it's a fairly popular product, and I finished it, but it's not one that fits in my toolkit. I don't need it, frankly. But I'd done a video on it, and I wanted to keep my account active because people constantly ask me questions about this particular product when I'm doing other live streams, etc. So I reached out to their marketing department. I said, okay, here's the video. And the video had performed really well for them. I didn't even sign up as an affiliate. It was already ranking #1 on YouTube if you search for their product. And I said, it's not for me to use. I'm not going to be using it day after day, but could you keep my account active so that I can, stay up to date with your updates so that I can answer questions? They said, no. I went, what? They said no. And so consequently, I said, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, I almost had that, do you know who I am kind of thing? But like, look on YouTube right now. I just did something that if you paid me for it, you would have to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars. And I just want to know about your product. So keep my account active. No, it's $50 a month. Yeah. And I said,
and instead of having a positive story where you could have been mentioning their brand quite normally and happily right now, no, now they're the butt of a joke. They're like, this is what not to do when it comes to influencer marketing.
Such a negative feeling for me. And it didn't cost them anything to give the account for free. And it's not like, I mean, I know a lot of people come up to brands and ask them for stuff that aren't real, that are just want it for free because they want to use it. But I was just thought how nearsighted it was. And it's just left such a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know if they could ever even repair their relationship if they wanted to. But it takes, as you said, being a little bit generous and recognizing that, some people are going to take advantage of you. But I'd rather have a few people take advantage of me than turn off people who I should be partnering with. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't know that you met Emmerich originally back in 2016. I'm not surprised at that story. I bet a lot of people's origin stories with different brands and different jobs began in that's the sad part of the virus is the loss of these one-on-one connections. Because you talked about, you go from knowing who a person is to becoming a friend, or at least a colleague with these people. And that makes all the difference in the world, because the trust factor. At the end of the day, there's so much going on that you're going to do business with people you trust. and that trust factor of having broken bread together, of having been at the event together, of seeing who they talk to, and seeing how they react to things and how they present themselves and how interested they are when they're talking to you and how much eye contact you make. Those are the things that make a huge, huge difference. So let's talk about expectations. So you're setting up you've decided that you're going to engage and start either being an influencer as a personality, or you're going to run an influencing program within your business. How do you set up reasonable expectations where you can be generous, but not oversold, that you can still be responsible?
Yeah, one of the things that I do, and I like to do it from both sides of the table as an influencer and as a business, is actually avoid setting expectations, avoid having expectations, basically until there's money on the table, right?
Yeah.
So, as from the Agora Pulse perspective, I'm giving people, influencers in our space, free access to the tool. I'm letting them come into our partner program, which is basically the affiliate program, and there are zero expectations. I want them to want to talk about me, and I want them to do it in a natural, organic, authentic way, which means I want them to have time to get to know the company, the product, the people behind the company. These are all very important things that people are going to talk about any business organically. But the difference is I watch and I pay attention to what people do. And I particularly pay attention to the people who are now talking about Agora Pulse in this case, or whatever brand it is that we're talking about. And I look for those opportunities to, oh, okay, they're really enjoying the tool. They just did a video. They just, posted a YouTube video. I didn't ask them to. They did it, talking about what they liked about Agora Pulse. Let's work with them some more. Let's give them some resources. Maybe it's cash, maybe it's access, maybe it's some one-on-one training, whatever the case might be, so that they learn more and they want to do more of that. And then eventually money comes on the table. And then when there's money on the table, excuse me, now we do need to figure out what some expectations are. Maybe that's a contract. Maybe it's a gentleman's agreement over email. It's okay either way. But we want to make sure that it is written down in some way. So a lot of businesses will do campaign-based influencer marketing, right? Well, they will decide, we're going to work with this influencer and we want X social posts and X pieces of content and that sort of thing. That's not really influencer marketing the way I like to do it, because you're not really building relationship there.
That's a sponsorship.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. It's a sponsorship. You're absolutely right. But if it's just one period that we're working on, like I usually do quarterly projects, so if like this is what we're doing next quarter, that's okay. As long as that perspective is there, that this is just one thing in the larger relationship, the larger scope of what we're going to be doing together, then let's talk about what it is that we'd like to do. And I want to make sure that you as the influencer have opportunity for creative input. Maybe you don't want to do what I would like to do, or maybe you'd like to do it differently. Maybe you've got something you're already working on and we can figure out how to dovetail our projects together. I got to be open to that, because first of all, I got to respect your time and your own priorities. You don't work for me full time, so my company is not your priority. And I also have to respect the fact that you know your job, you know your business, you know your audience, you know your strengths far better than I could possibly know them. So for me to come to you and say, look, Steve, I'd like you to write 4 blog posts and 2 emails. Well, first of all, it's not smart. And it's not very respectful. But maybe I say, Steve, I'd like to do some kind of a content campaign next month. I'd like to talk about Power Reports. It's our new feature that's coming out. What would work well with you? Could we do a webinar? Could we do a video or a blog post or something like that? And I might throw some ideas at you, and you're going to come back to me with some ideas that were sparked as part of the conversation. And then we can come to a mutual understanding of, okay, Mike, I want to do this. I'd like to have you on a webinar in November. If the timing works out for you, and I can say, we've got a summit in November. Let's work on that together. So having that written down, but more importantly, having that conversation first, so that everybody's excited and interested and on the same page, is super important.
So how lucrative can it be for influencers?
Well, that's probably going to depend on the audience, and which is unfortunate because people like to say audience size doesn't matter, but it does. It's one of the easy initial ways to gauge the potential of a particular influencer from the start. Now, one of the things that you could do is make sure that you have tracking in place for sales. Now, this is easiest for SaaS companies where I can set up an affiliate program and give you a link. And if somebody signs up and subscribes, that's all easily trackable, right? If it's a brick and mortar shop, this is harder. So I'll be totally upfront about that. But if I can set up affiliate tracking, then I can measure this much of your activity, right? Wherever you talk about me, wherever you mention me, where it's appropriate, you can include a link. It's not always appropriate. It's not always possible, right? For you to like just verbally drop an affiliate link in a conversation like this, that's not reasonable. But there will be opportunities for that to happen. Now we've got something to measure if you could do that, because now I can measure how much traffic you're sending me, how many, leads and how many sales I'm getting as a result of our relationship. And if I can do that, that gives me a baseline on which to build, which is something we've done here at Agora Pulse. Is our paid ambassadors, they don't all make the same amount of money because some of them have referred more people in the past to us. And so we give them raises. We keep giving them more money on a month-to-month basis because of past performance. So that's one thing that you can do. But as far as dollars, a lot of it, like I said, it's just going to depend on the audience. We all know and love Mari Smith. She's one of the pillars and titans in our industry. She commands top dollar when it comes to her relationship with brands. Honestly, me, not so much. I don't make nearly as much money as Mari Smith if I'm working with a brand because I don't have her clout. I don't have her experience. I don't have her audience.
I'm gonna challenge you on one thing there. Or just kind of get into the weeds a little bit. You talked about how can be a challenge to drop an affiliate or a tracking link, even just a UTM link, to somebody, especially if you're like in a podcast or something like that, and where it's difficult to track. I think that that strategically, quite often people just ignore the fact that they can just create a landing page themselves. If myself as an influencer, am going to join your ambassador program and I'm actually going to promote your product, then I can create a page that is dototech.com/Agora Pulse, which is a landing page where I talk a little bit about the product and I include the reference links. And that's where I drive traffic. And then you're going to know every piece of traffic that comes from Steve Dotto is coming through that page, and it can be tracked and you can identify it. It takes a little bit of discipline. It takes a little bit of strategy, but it also shows a commitment. It's like, okay, you can leave your toothbrush in the overnight, right?
Yeah,
I don't know where that's
true.
It's true.
I don't. Yeah,
your place. I'm giving.
I'm not sure where that reference came from, but and you're 100% right. And we do that. It is, it's more time, and usually it's a little bit of higher expense in terms of the tracking. Like we have to subscribe to a tool called First Promoter because I want to be able to set up a landing page for our ambassadors. And I want to be able to associate all the traffic that comes into that landing page with that ambassador's tracking account. So you could go to agorapulse.com/Dotto today, and it's Steve Dotto, your landing page. And it's anybody that signs up for Agora Pulse on that landing page, I'll know that you sent them. And that's easy to say. You're right. agorapulse.com/Dotto.
So there's two ways that it can go. So it can go, the vendor can create it or the influencer can create it. I typically do it on my own for within our own site. But regardless, it does take that commitment and it takes that kind of attention to detail. But the results, I mean, is there much churn? You've got the same influencers now that we started with 5 years ago, for the most part.
That's a super smart question. No, there isn't much churn with the way that we do it because it's relationship building. And here's an interesting thing. I've had a couple influencers where they weren't doing very much, and I wasn't hearing from them regularly. And I reached out to one lady in particular, and I remember it really vividly because I was like little anxious because we have a relationship, and I didn't want to be critical, and I didn't want to, be judging in my emails. But I emailed her, and I was like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but you haven't been doing very much for us. And she was relieved that I said something, because she didn't have time, and that was her issue. She did not have time, but she was feeling pressured and overwhelmed and that sort of thing. Even though I wasn't really pressuring her, right?
No, but you feel an obligation.
She felt obligated, right? And by me being a human and opening that conversation, she was relieved, and we still have that relationship. She's still an ambassador. That situation has changed, and I just removed all the expectations off of her, and she's no expectations. And when she wants to do something, she does something, and I appreciate it, and it's fine. It's fine like that. So yeah, there isn't a lot of churn. To think about it specifically in my case, I think there have been 2 ambassadors that are no longer ambassadors, and that's because they've had career changes, that they developed conflicts of interest, which was totally fine. So they didn't want to have that. So we just, okay, that's cool. You're no longer an ambassador, and we're still friends, right? That relationship's still there, and in fact, one of them, their situation changed again. And next quarter, they're probably going to come back to being an ambassador.
I think I might know who that might be. Okay. So
probably do.
I know your answer on this, but do you ever look at somebody that's an ambassador for a competitive product and go, I got to flip them?
Yeah. Wait, this is just between us, right?
Between us. Nobody else is watching. That's the title of the show, just between you and me.
Yes, 100%. Now, interestingly, funnily, most of the brands in our space don't do a lot of influencer marketing, or quite frankly, they don't do it well. Again, I'm not trying to judge, but you don't see them building relationships the way that we do.
Case in point, the example I gave earlier.
Yes. Funny story that I like to share. I was sitting in social media marketing world 2 years ago, and I was talking to Goldie Chan. So for those of you who don't know Goldie, she's amazing. She's referred to as the Oprah of LinkedIn. She did LinkedIn Live. She's a huge influencer. She's a star in our space, and she's amazing. I had gotten to meet her the night before. I was introduced to her at a dinner with Winnie's son. And I was sitting down at a table in the networking plaza waiting for the next session. And she came over and sat with me, and we were just having a nice conversation. We were not talking about our space. We were having a conversation. But the CEO of a competing tool came over and tried to give her a shirt and tried to talk to her about his tool. and she's like, do you know who this is? I'm sitting with Mike Allton, so go away. Don't have a conversation with me. I'm talking to Mike. Because it was about the relationship, and he didn't get it, right? He didn't think that there was anything wrong with him just interjecting himself in a conversation like that. So there are a couple people that they swear by other tools in our space, and I respect that, and I kid them about it, and we have a good time joking about that. And someday I'm going to flip them. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again.
Well, it's probably not as much you as them. If you keep that line of communication open, then the opportunity is when the other guys screw up. That's the thing, right? Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why you don't want to screw up. Is because I think I haven't experienced it in the social marketing, in the social media tool space, but I've certainly experienced poaching in other spaces. And where you're presenting one product and the competitor saying, we've got to get you on our tool, we've got to get you on our tool. And I don't typically open the door for that myself, just because it's I tend to think that all of the tools are pretty darn good, and it's up to the user to determine whether or not the tool is going to work for you. It's how you engage and how hard you work with it and that sort of stuff. But having said that, I was curious to know if whether or not
have you been on any of the whale watching tours in San Diego that one of our competitors puts on?
No, I've never done that.
They've done it 2 or 3 years in a row, and I just laugh. They will take a group of influencers. Most of them are my existing ambassadors, and they will treat them to a whale watching tour. They go out in the bay in San Diego, and they look for whales, and they have fun. And I'm not threatened My influencers, my friends, my ambassadors, they're still my friends. They're still my ambassadors. They got a free whale watching tour.
Yeah, I think that's probably the reason that I don't, is I go, I don't. Yeah, there's a certain loyalty aspect,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, you want that because that will weather you through some of the tougher times.
Yeah.
Just checking our notes here, making sure that I'm covering off all the stuff. I think it's fascinating that, you know, you've got a unique perspective. I can't think of anybody else who I work with in the ambassadorship space who has the social media presence that you have. So the fact that you are an influencer in your own right at the same time as running it gives you a different perspective, and consequently, the program that you guys run is unique. You know, if a company is starting out, like finding somebody like Mike Allton to run their company, to run their influencer program, that's not practical in many cases. In most cases,
No.
it's only practical in one case.
Yeah.
but would you, if I was a really cool SaaS company, I do an audio product, and I've come to you and I say, Mike, I have to start building. We don't have any influencer program right now. Would you advise them to start with just a kick-ass affiliate program and grow, or would you advise them to start right in on relationships with influencers?
Well, I'm glad you asked about affiliate programs, because you mentioned that before, and I was going to touch on it, how with your basic affiliate program, there is overlap and similarity between an influencer program. Typically, I will use affiliate marketing products. I use First Promoter. We use Get Ambassador before then, to help track those campaigns. But the difference is it's invitation only, right? Other brands that have affiliate programs, basically anybody can join. Right.
Yeah,
there's a link on the homepage, or they're listed in Share a Sale, and they can apply, but they're basically just giving their name and their website, and somebody somewhere looks at it and says, okay, you can be an affiliate. There's no relationship there. There's no understanding of what they do. Our ambassador program for Agora Pulse, that's limited to social media influencers, right? Somebody that runs an e-commerce site or a coupon site, they're not going to get in, because we want to build a relationship there, and there has to be a purpose to that. So I would definitely have an affiliate program, but I would have it by invitation only. Start building the relationships, and when somebody is excited about what it is that you're doing and they want to promote you or talk about you, you've got the tool in place to quickly set them up and give them a link, and you can give them a commission so that they can benefit from doing that, and they can see for themselves, oh wow, yeah, I talked about, you know, this audio tool in my community, and I drove 100 people and 10 of them signed up, and now I'm making $100 a month, and all I did was a 30-minute video. I can do more of that, right? That's the kind of thought process that you might want as a brand, is to allow somebody to succeed. Because if you don't do that, if they talk about you and then nothing happens, did they succeed in their own mind? You know, probably not. You know, maybe they drove some people to you, maybe they didn't. They don't know, because you didn't have the tracking in place. And if you're not compensating them, right, then there's no long-term benefit for them. They did it once, and now they feel like, you know, they've repaid you for whatever it is, you know, whatever access you gave them up front. But if you can track it, and you can give them commission on sales, and you can reward them, and then you can encourage them, because that's another part, is making sure that you follow up as the brand with these people, and, you know, amplify what they're doing if you can. Like if they're, you know, doing a Facebook Live, share it to your page, let them cross post it, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, you guys are
that's going to make you feel better.
So 2 last questions. One is, if you're in a small business that's growing, and you've got your, obviously, product development and your marketing team kind of in place, and you're kind of moving ahead within the marketing department, when do you hire somebody to run an influencer program? Or what size, how important is your position? Like, are you going to hire your Facebook ads guy first, or woman first? Are you going to hire are you going to hire a trainer first? How important do you think your job is to the growth of your firm?
It is very important, and it's less about the title or the role of the individual, and it's more about the personality, because it does need to be somebody that's relationship focused, which means they do have to have time. So there's kind of two elements to that, right? Emmerich is a very personable guy. You know, anybody that's ever met him at any of our conferences would relate to that. He's a great guy to meet and talk to, very enjoyable guy. But he's also the CEO of a fast-growing company, which means at some point he's now time limited, and relationships do take time. But I would start with that. I would start with figuring out, okay, who in our organization, no matter what your role is today, who's the most personal person, frankly, right? Because this person's almost going to become the face of the company in some respects. You know, I'm not necessarily on all of our public channels, but to a lot of individual people, if you ask them to name a person who works at Agora Pulse, they're going to mention me because I'm the person they talk to.
It's just because they don't know. That's just because they haven't met Jenny Brennan yet.
That's true. That is 100%.
But okay, I'll give you it though now.
Yeah. So have somebody who's personable, who wants to build relationships, who understands at least some basics of relationship building, you know, being open to opportunities, being empathic, and that sort of thing.
I love this because it's almost not the right term, influence marketing. It's relationship marketing. You know, you could get back to like Ted Rubin stuff. You know, it's always about relationships. It's always about those relationships. And it's interesting that when you came on, that was when Emmerich didn't have the time, just because of the pressures of the growth of the company, to nurture those relationships anymore. That he had to find somebody that could nurture those relationships. That's a good way to look at it. So that's the business side. From the social media marketing person side, from my side as a creator, what are the things other than and you said that audience size counts, but I bet it counts less than other things. If you had to list off the top 3 attributes that you're looking for people that are nurturing and are representing to their community, what are you looking for? Other than the obvious, they have to be in the social media marketing space. But what attributes are you looking for?
Well, the first thing that I look at, I put under this umbrella term called brand fit. And it means a lot of things. Brand fit means, they have to be in the same basic industry, talking to the same audience in some way. This is actually where the smaller you get in terms of like size of business, the less the industry matters. Like there was a question I saw in the comments. Somebody asked, well, I run a spa, which is a very obviously geographically centric, you know, you're only going to service, you know, a 25-mile radius around that spa. You know, how do I get started in influencer marketing? Well, you could be looking at other complementary businesses and having events. Like you could have a wine tasting event at your spa, you know, and people could be sipping bubbly and having spa treatments. I mean, that just sounds magical to me. That's influencer marketing. Really, it's you know, there's a, you know, people might come up with other names for it, but that's influencer marketing. You're reaching another business's audience, another individual's audience. So you look at the brand fit, and that also includes things like style, tone, culture, which Steve, you actually mentioned at the outset. You specifically called out how at Agora Pulse and the projects that I've run, we're like seemingly connecting with the best of the best when it comes to influencers in our space, and everything we do is above board, and we're not, you know, connecting with influencers whose tactics might be a little shady, and we both know who I'm talking about because we know who those people are in our space. And we've decided as a brand, we don't want to be part of that. We don't want to have our brand associated with people who might be using more shady marketing techniques. So we don't make those connections. They're not part of our brand fit. It's a super important concept to think through. You know, what is our brand? What is our voice? Who are we as a company? How is that reflected in the influencers we work with? So that's super important. Definitely the kind of content or campaigns that they might do as an influencer. I mean, how are they an influencer, right? Are they creating video content? Are they creating blog content? Are they're just active on social media and they've got an audience there? What does that look like? Because whatever it is that you do as a brand in collaboration with that influencer, it's got to make sense for your brand, right? If they're only doing, you know, meetings at an organization once a month, that's a physical, you know, in-person event, maybe that's going to work for you. Maybe it's not. That might not be the kind of relationship that you would be able to leverage long term. But in my space, I'm looking for people who are creating content, people, blog content, video content, podcasts, live videos, right? Because we can figure out ways to leverage that content, regardless of the size of their audience, whether it's 100 YouTube subscribers or 50,000 people a month coming to their blog. We can make that work. We'll find ways to make that work. So those are a couple of really important considerations for sure.
Awesome. We'll deal with one last question and then we will wrap things up, which is Heather's asking just for some specific, and I like how you've come up with, so you went on the spot for the spa. So a fine art photographer, can it work for her?
Yeah. Apparently my favorite thing is to suggest a wine tasting party. So I'm going to go with that for you. You can totally do that because it makes sense. You're looking for a particular audience, and wine and fine art, they go together. There's going to be some overlap there. Different example that I give you from another organization. I often talk to Jessica Phillips, her social media week, Lima. And she's got a great guy in Lima, Mark Boker, who runs a comic book store. So again, another very geographically limited. No one's going to drive 100 miles to go to a comic book store, but they might drive 25 miles if he's got a limited edition Superman. So for Mark, it makes sense for him to partner with the skateboarding company across town, because that company is meeting the same audience. You might, depending on your geography, you might find local bloggers, you might find local vloggers, you might find other kinds of influencers. The examples I give are usually other businesses because that's easy to understand, and they're easy to find. Everything else, you just never know. I don't know if Toledo, Ohio has a blogger who's talking to a young audience. You'd have to do that research.
Because of the nature of photography, I'll just throw out a couple of ideas that I've seen in the past that I think are strong in an influencer space. Is when Sue Zimmerman did a course on Instagram, did a meetup. That was back in the days when we would travel to it, but a photographer came and did a photo shoot with each person that was there, and it was a condensed photo shoot, 5 or 6 shots that they use, and each one of those influencers, because they were all on Instagram and building their brand, would then share that, share the link to the photographer. So that kind of opened the doors. And you could do that as long as you can meet physically, in the networking events that happen within your city, et cetera. By going to the networking event, and just as Mike's saying, you give something away. You give a series of headshots. Maybe you do the headshots for the entire group for their website, or take pictures for their website, and then make sure your branding is attached. You give something away in order to get something in return. And here's one big difference, and that I would look for. People will ask you to give them something in return for publicity. I think you don't let them drive the bus. You decide who's going to work for you. You go and you offer rather than reacting to somebody's request, because somebody asking for the request just wants to save money. Whereas you're looking for opportunity. And so if you go and you give from that perspective, if you drive the bus, I think that it will work well, because I know photographers are always asked, hey, I'm a really important influencer, take my picture and it's good. No, you pick the person and then make it work. I hired a photographer here just recently to do a whole bunch of headshots. And I thought, I wonder if I should, and I didn't even go there. Now she's thrilled. And now she's discovered that it's so good and she wants to have her branding attached. So next time we talk, it'll be a little bit more of a quid pro quo, but I was happy to pay for the services. So that would be my advice on that space. Cause I know photographers, so many of those services just get hammered with, I'm an influencer. Oh, yeah. You must surely want to give me. That's the way I felt about that one piece of software too.
Yeah. Like Heather, one thing you might try is identifying some bloggers who are just writing like tutorials type content on photography, and create a guest piece where you are doing what you do, fine art photography, but you're writing it up. And the fact that you do fine art photography is just the examples and the illustrations used in the piece on, maybe how to use your iPhone to take great pictures or something like that. I mean, I've seen some amazing pictures with iPhones of fine art. Maybe you're, not interested in iPhone, maybe it's a Canon, whatever it is might be. That would be another angle to take.
Mike, tell us about your the Agora Pulse Facebook group?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook group. It's about 3,500 members now that is called Social Pulse Community. And that particular community is really dedicated to helping anybody who wants to level up when it comes to social media. So whether you're a small, medium, large business owner, social media manager for a company, maybe you're an agency owner, this is a really fun place for you to connect with others and bounce ideas and learn. We do a Tuesday lunch and learn where we do like a 30-minute exclusive, just like we're doing here, right? We bring on a guest expert. We've got wonderful videos like with Marcus Sheridan and Ann Handley and wonderful people in the space teaching what they know for free. Not you.
I've never been on it. Those guys are all wonderful, by the way.
Yeah. But see, we haven't had the great Steve Dotto. So
where do they go for it?
It's facebook.com/groups/social pulse community.
Good stuff. And you are an author, like a best-selling author now. Look at that.
I am. That's
along with your team, along with your crew. Yeah. So this book has a chapter on influencer marketing.
Yeah, a whole chapter. You can go to socialmediabook.shop. It's on, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Apple, everywhere. It's a fun collaboration, which with the 360 Marketing Squad, Stephanie, Jen, Amanda, as you see there, plus we have a fifth co-author, Eric Buteau, and we really go through everything a business would need to know about social media. We talk through all the different networks, and then we spend a lot of time going into evergreen strategies like influencer marketing, like live video, like paid advertising. That stuff's not going to change. I mean, people like to joke that a book in social media is outdated the minute it comes to press, right? There are doubtless some things that have changed in the last couple of months about like Facebook or Instagram from a technical perspective, but from a tactical and a strategic perspective, this book is gold, I think. So yeah, pick up a copy.
Indeed. Mike, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I miss you, sir. I'm glad that we got to reconnect. I'm going to just put you in the green room for a sec while I promote next week's show, which is right along the lines of what you were talking about. So just talk to you in a second. My thanks so much to Mike Allton for sharing with us. Now, speaking of the 360 Marketing Group, I think the only member we haven't had on is next week's guest. We're going to be welcoming the lovely and talented Jen Herman, another one of my favorites. We're going to be how to get more followers on Instagram. And the thing about Jen, it makes her even more cool, is she's a Canadian. She lives down in San Diego now, but she grew up just like 25 miles away from me. So there will be lots of we'll be very polite, and we will both apologize a lot next week. That is coming up next week right here on Just Between You and Me. A reminder that you can watch all of our replays at invideo.io/youandme. And while I mention that, our thanks to our hosts at InVideo. They are so generous in helping educate all of us on becoming more effective and more professional social media marketers. So thanks so much to our team. And thank you, Payal. From all of us here, till next week, I'm Steve Dotto. Have fun storming a castle.